Thank you for finding the NSE podcast on YouTube. To find links for our online hospitality security training, check out the video description below. Enjoy the Nightlife Security Podcast.
Hey, this is Bryce Ross Johnson from Good Times at Davy Wayne's in Hollywood, and you're listening to Nightclub Security Podcast.
This episode of Nightclub Security Podcast is brought to you by Black Diamond Radio by Custom Earpiece. Visit customearpiece.com.
Welcome to the Nightclub Security Podcast, a professional resource for the nightclub security industry. Whether you're a nightclub bouncer, guard, owner, or operator, this is the podcast for you. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain. Let's get started. Welcome, everybody. You're listening to the Nightclub Security Podcast. This is your host, Manny Marquez. As always, in studio with me is nightclub security industry expert, Robert C. Smith. Robert, good day to you, sir.
How are you, Manny?
Doing well. Another Monday, more work.
Yep.
A little overcast.
That's good. I'm glad the work never ends for both of us, and the weather is much better than it's been over the last week.
Yes, we're actually coming off a firestorm here in Southern California in the San Diego area, I'm sure.
A firestorm. You know, I was just thinking about some of our downloads of our podcasts, and I bet some of these people have never heard what a firestorm is.
Well, it'd be like, I guess, a rainstorm.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fire going on.
High winds, 100-degree weather, fire starts, and it just blows like dust devils.
Yeah, for those of you that don't live in our region in Southern California, there's a time or a duration of days that we're on high alert, and that usually comes with hot winds coming in from the deserts, drier air, hotter temperatures, and it creates a environment to where fires happen, or they're more likely to happen. But this last
Meteorologist Manny Marquez.
Yeah, I watched the news, man. The whole city was on fire, so I got an education. But so fortunately, not a lot of damage other than burnt, scorched earth. But we were fortunate on this one, and just happy that we were out of it. And so you missed the entire all the fires. You were actually been out of town the last couple of weeks.
Miami, then D.C. So I got to see the fires on the news out of D.C. when I was up there. But our first trip was into Miami. I was there 5 days. The weather was great, but the partying is late night. Man, it doesn't get going until 11 o'clock, and the clubs really don't open. I visited one of the venues. It doesn't open until 11 p.m.
That's crazy.
It stays open until 6 a.m. The guys get home about 8 or 9 in the morning, where, back it up for us. We're in California, and guys are home by 4. They're just getting home by 7 or 8, 9.
That's the vampire life. That's where you got to put the covers on the windows. And
Europeans, South Americans, they're partying late night. They eat late. They're eating dinner at 10 p.m. Full on meat, potatoes, wine, dinner at 10 p.m.
and then they go party.
Out, and they're going out.
All right, on.
So that was the Opium Group.
And their venues are
Set, Mokai, Cameo, and the Mansion. Mansion is pretty cool. Old theater, and it's right. All of them are in South Beach. That was tough training there. Tough being there during the day in South Beach. Everything you have seen on TV is what I see when I go there.
Then back home, and then we had you back out in D.C.
I had a day and a half in San Diego and back to D.C. Do some work for the Penn Social Group up there. Jeffrey Dawson's group. He's got about 11 or 12 venues up there. Some bars, some restaurants. But
who are the venues that we were working with?
Well, and Sarah Norman from Penn Social is the main group there. She's the one that puts us forward, and it's Rocket Bar, Iron Horse, and Buffalo Billiards, along with Penn Social and Sarah. She's kind of the driving force there, and I know, and thanks, Jeff, for being a podcast listener.
Oh, that's right. You were telling me about him.
Yeah, it was kind of nice. He told his group, and we had a group of second session we did for them, 12, 13 people. I know he wanted to be there for the full time on day one. That would have been a little bit better if he was there for the 20-something people that were there. But it was good to hear him say that he's listened to all the podcasts, listened to a couple of them twice.
I love that. I love when people get that feedback.
It made me feel good in front of the group. And one of the things he said, and Sarah said it too, and she brought it up to me the end of the second day when we were talking, that we'll probably do some more work for them, only because he wanted to kind of change the culture of what they do security wise. The venues are nice. I mean, they're not over the top VIP-ish. They're more industrial, lots of metal, concrete, games, music, DJs.
Very basic.
Yeah, but they look well run. Sarah is a taskmaster. She runs a show there at Penn Social and does a good job. And anyway, set this up for all the venues and got them there. Got all their staff there from the 4 venues. Did our national host session day 1 and day 2. Did our national host on day 3 and day 4 for the rest of their people. So it was a good trip overall. We did an extra session at Shadow Room, as we always do, thanks to Stephen Acott for letting us use Shadow. So we did 3 sessions in DC.
And that was in conjunction with DC Nightlife?
Skip Coburn, DC Nightlife, and for the Restaurant Association of Metro Washington.
So long 2 weeks. Now you're back. Welcome back.
Back for 3 days. I'm off tomorrow. Edmonton, Canada.
Yeah, you got your trip to Canada.
There's a national conference up there, the Responsible Hospitality Institute. National conference up there. The Responsible Hospitality Edmonton is what it's called. Came out of the Responsible Hospitality Institute in Jim Peters, but they're doing a national conference. I'm going to be on a panel. Get up there a day early and meet a bunch of people. Hopefully make some inroads with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP. Hopefully they'll adopt our program, look at least evaluate it at what we do, our online program for their people.
Yeah, it should be pretty interesting what comes out of that.
Yeah.
And then tonight, you and I are about a couple hours away from doing the last day of the PSO training for a couple of venues here, which is Double Deuce, Whiskey Girl, 2 really cool venues here in San Diego. So, yeah, we're just keeping busy.
It's nice to, again, they're with Double Deuce and Whiskey Girl, proactive management. Ryan and Jake wanting to do it, get it done.
And Jerry.
Sorry, Jerry.
Yeah, so working with some good people. Also, Ness over there have welcomed the whole program, and so we're doing some fun stuff with them. We're doing some cool stuff with them as well. So in the news, what do you got for our news story?
It's kind of and please, this is a serious point, and I hesitated in putting this one out there, but it came out last night. It's out of Nigeria, and it's on the heels of the extremists who kidnapped 200 girls, young girls, did whatever they're doing.
Which is a hot topic in the news
around the world.
Yeah.
Countries have gotten together to verbally and economically go after them, and that's great. But in our world, in the hospitality world, last night there was a car bombing, and it's not linked to them right now, but they're expecting it to come out to be linked to the same group in northern Nigeria, the city of Kano, Kano. Right now, 4, maybe 5 dead, depending on what news story you see, whether the driver got away or not. But of importance to us, it's in a business district, an entertainment district, much like the gas lamp in San Diego, or much like part of the entertainment districts in South Beach or wherever you're at, where you have a lot of bars and clubs and people go there. Now, although this is a Muslim part of the country, they kind of look the other way for the Christians, the tourists that come in at the restaurants, hotels, hotels, and bars with the alcohol service. And they drove the car bomb in, got out. One story is the driver got out, got on a scooter and drove away, and the bomb detonated. Another story is the car was on its way to the final destination right in the middle of this entertainment district, and it blew up prematurely, killing the driver. Either way, the target is simple. It's a soft target, meaning easy to get in, easy to get out, easy to cause damage. Important to us, though, in our country, we've got hundreds of those soft targets. Think of your neighborhood.
And this is actually something that, as operators, as a bouncer, this is not something that we think about too often.
Not on your radar.
And if it is, it's very minor, and it's not something that we think of on a day-to-day basis, and for good reason. It generally does not happen.
And rightfully so. We shouldn't always have to think about this, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, we should always be thinking about this, because in my opinion, my professional opinion, from my 20 years in law enforcement, my 17 years doing this consulting, it's going to happen. In the United States, we're going to have a very similar tragedy occur, much like the Boston Marathon bombing a year and a month ago. Then it's just a matter of time before we have a very similar incident to what happened last night in Nigeria with a car bombing. Yeah,
and this is something that we generally don't think about. I mean, as an owner, as an operator, as a bouncer, as a guard, when I walk into work at night, this is not what's on the top of my list. And I guess that's a good thing, because that means nothing's happening in that direction. But the point is that eventually something's going to happen.
We have to think of it. I'm positive if you look back, nobody thought there'd be, 11 years ago, there would be terrorists take over planes and bring them into our buildings, into our country. a year and 2 months ago, no one thought that backpack bombs with pressure cookers would be left at the finish line of the Boston Marathon bombing. And we have to think of that. We have to open our mind and consider that our entertainment districts are soft targets, and we need to harden them. We need to do things to just get people thinking about it. We don't have to put ballards up. We don't have to block streets off. We don't have to search vehicles. But, in many of these cases, they're preventable. If you know what to look for, you can at least you can maybe take steps to limit the damage from a car bombing.
And as always, I mean, this is a big topic, and this is nothing that we're going to cover here, as a news portion of this show. But I guess the main point is, in bringing this up, is begin to think about it. Begin to think about the process. Begin to have discussions with your coworkers. Play that scenario out in your mind. If I saw something suspicious, what would I do? What would be my action? How would my manager feel about that action?
And you and I just went through this for 30 minutes before we did this, and it's a great discussion to have with your own troops, your own crew. In my mind, as a security consultant, the New York adage that they put out a few years ago, see something, say something, that has now been adopted in every airport, train station, bus station around our country. See something, say something. I was just in D.C. for a day trip maybe 3 weeks ago for one day where Homeland Security talked about that, and they talked about the potential increased threat, and they talked about one specific threat that was in D.C. a year ago. They wanted bars and clubs to be aware of this. And we're used to not getting involved.
Yeah. So as always, we always bring up a topic that we can do a whole show on. So, and this is another topic: terrorism awareness and what would I do and protocols and all those things. So, it's definitely something that we can put down as a show topic later. But again, I guess the main point is start the discussion. That's it. Just start the discussion. So, Robert, anything else in the news? Was that your one story?
No, that was it. That's all I'll talk about today.
Okay. Today's topic is...
Well, and the title was not flashy. In the training in Miami, the training in D.C., and then a news article was sent to me from a friend of mine in North Carolina, and this is out of Fayetteville, another news story, but we're going to do the story on this one, our podcast, and it's about a bar that got raided after a year-long investigation. So I guess our title, Dealing with Drugs in the Club or Your Bar, or dealing with the potential threat of drugs. And I'll let you fancy up the title when we put it out there, but the crux is dealing with drugs in your bar.
So basically, dealing with drugs in your bar.
Dealing with drugs in your bar. They're as fancy as we can get.
Fancy it up for you. So that's today's topic. We're going to take a short break. Stick with us. We'll be right back.
When Nightclub Security Consultants recommends radios to our clients, we recommend Black Diamond Radios by Custom Earpiece. Why? They're the best in the business. Simple as that. Tired of the high cost of replacing broken radios? It's time to beef up your nightclub communications. The Black Diamond CE450 radio is the most durable radio on the market. Black Diamond designed and built this radio with nightclubs and bars in mind. Made for high noise environments, the CE450 is shock and water resistant and has a long-lasting battery. Your security team has a tough job. They need a tough radio. For 2 years, if they can break the CE450 radio, Custom Earpiece will replace it. Period. No hassles, no questions. Need more than just radios? CustomEarpiece.com is your one-stop shop. Radios, headsets, custom ear molds, earpieces, adapters. Just go directly to CustomEarpiece.com for all your radio needs. Got a question? Call Custom Earpiece during business hours, and you will always speak to a live person, ready to assist you. CustomEarpiece.com customer service is second to none. Get 10% off your purchase today. Just click through the banner on the nightclubsecurity.com homepage or the Nightclub Security Podcast show notes. Use promo code NIGHTCLUB7. That's nightclub and the number 7. Visit CustomEarpiece.com and order today.
All right, and welcome back, everybody. So today's show, Robert, we're going to be talking about drugs, basically drugs in your club or your bar. So
we could bring it down to 2 points. What do you do when you find them at the door? What do you do when you find them in the club? But I think we need to add some points in there to clear this up for the listener.
Let me start with this. So I think for the most part, and I guess it's depending on your local, but in my experience, drugs really haven't been predominant. You have your occasional incident where you catch somebody using in the bathrooms, but overall, I guess from my perspective, it wasn't a big issue. Now, I guess that could probably be different depending on where you're at, where you're working, what sort of operation you have.
Well, would you say that within our industry as a whole, the bar and nightclub restaurant industry, that drugs have always been there since you've been in there involved?
I think there's always
by both guests and employees.
I would guess that there's always an element that exists. I think a lot of it is hidden, or I guess quote unquote underground, but definitely it exists. It's around, and this is what we're talking about today.
Well, and one of the things I think is so important for owners, guys like Jeffrey, who's not there on a night-to-night basis, but he's running.
You're talking Jeffrey from
in DC, the Penn. See, I'm thinking way ahead of myself, Jeffrey.
Sorry
about that.
Too many clients in your head.
Jeffrey Dawson, Penn Social. He's got so many venues. He's not at every one. He's the captain of the ship. I mean, there are other stakeholders in his company. I get that. But from the top down, you have to admit that drugs are present. You have to know it. Even if you don't see it, you have to admit there is some element, whether it's the guests bringing it in for casual use or the employees using on a casual level, you have to admit it to yourself that these are being used. Once you admit it, you don't have to say, I got a big drug problem, I need to call the cops and do dog sweeps. You don't have to do that. Just accept it and then move on, and we'll move to the next point.
Can we say that it's safe to assume that regardless of your size, your location, and the type of venue that you have, I guess it's safe to say that a drug issue exists even though you may not see it?
Absolutely. I would say 100%. Every venue.
And this could be people are using drugs either as employees or as guests, management,
promoters, outside contractors, everyone, somebody, entertainment, somewhere, somehow, drugs are being used on that premise, and it be one single bartender with one shift a week, or it could be multiple employees and multiple guests. You just have to admit it. You may not see it, but it is happening to some level. And I'm not talking minor recreational marijuana use, that you may this or that. I'm talking about methamphetamine, cocaine, ecstasy, ketamine, Molly, or any number of prescription drugs that are out there for chronic back pain or mental state issues, any number of things that you just have to admit, and you may not want to dig into it, and that's okay. They're being used to some level.
Okay, so we can agree that usage is happening somewhere in the nooks and crannies of your establishment. Usage is happening.
Absolutely.
There's a difference between usage and a problem.
And you're absolutely right. Years ago, what first came onto my radar was Al Gore and Tipper Gore with, and I don't know how many years that's been, but it was the Rave Act.
That was a long time ago.
Late 90s, early 2000, the Rave Act. And I thought, wow, the feds really think there is a huge drug problem. Well, yes, in Orlando, in Miami, in certain parts of the country.
New York,
Las
Vegas,
where there was a lot of late night, after hours partying, and the Rave Act attacked club drugs. Okay, I get that. What we're talking about, to a point, club drugs, ecstasy, GHB, ketamine, Rohypnol, those type of things. But our discussion, you just have to admit, across the board, there was some level of drug use in your venue. Just admit it. Whether you think you have a problem or not, it doesn't mean it rises to the police level, but you have an issue.
All right, so I'm an owner and a bouncer. I accept that fact. Drugs are being used. How do I know when it becomes an issue?
Well, sometimes you won't know. You can't bury your head in the sand. For example, the case, and we'll post this also on the show notes. For over a year, the local authorities, and then they got the state involved to help them investigate this bar. Well, now, I haven't got the affidavit. I just read the news story, and the news story was pretty good, where law enforcement saw drugs being stored in the walk-in freezer. Law enforcement saw bartenders or employees walk out to their car, go in a secret compartment of their car, pull out drugs to sell on the premise of the bar. There had been shootings on the premise. There have been other fights and other violence on the premise. And I'm telling you, when you have issues that you want to bury your head in the sand about, you can't. They're going to come back and bite you. And in this case, this bar has probably lost its license because of, for whatever reason, not addressing the facts. So when you think you have a problem, take steps to address the problem.
Well, let me stop you there. So there's a difference between burying your head in the sand and just being ignorant. If I'm a club owner, operator, if I'm a bouncer, what are things that I'm going to be looking for to give me signs, cues, hints, tips, whatever, that something's happening?
Well, if I was an owner and I thought, I listened to this podcast and I wonder, I would go directly to my middle bartender. I'd go directly to one of my middle bouncers. I wouldn't go to my manager because they're going to stroke me and say, oh, no, boss, we don't have a drug problem. But I'd go to my employees that might be on the front line operation. I'd say, hey, what do you think? Do you think we got people using drugs here? I'm not going to go after them. And I'd give them some immunity so they would know as an owner, I'm not coming after them. And they could be wrong. It's okay because I want their honest opinion. And I think you'll find out that they'll tell you the truth. So if you ask, you'll probably get a good answer if they have some sort of immunity to tell you the truth. Then step right into it and get some training. Whether you take our online course on club drugs and narcotics, you go ask the local police department or local state authorities to come in and give your staff some training. Your staff knows that there is some element of drugs being used in your club. It doesn't mean you have a problem. You just want to educate yourself on what to look for. Once you understand that, then, and I think you're going into this next, is have a policy on what to do when you do discover something.
I was going to say, I was always surprised throughout my management career that after, it was a while before I actually realized how prevalent the use of cocaine was in not only just places I worked, but people that I associated with. And I was fairly ignorant to the fact that people around me were cocaine users.
It's a hidden secret.
And
it's common.
Maybe I wasn't cool enough to hang out and nobody wanted to tell me. But, part of it is like, I remember reaching a point in my career where it was like, oh, okay, this is happening. People that I know are using it. I never knew they used it. So not necessarily ignorance, but the signs aren't always there. So you're saying first part is start asking around. Don't ask the management. Don't ask. Just basically inquire.
Yeah.
And then after that, we're talking about training, maybe.
But understand understand this, Manny. I remember some of your workers. I don't know if they were using drugs or not, but was the door open for them? I mean, think about it. You've got college kids pulling 16 units. They've got a day job, and they work at your bar as a bartender till 2:30 in the morning. That's burning the candle at all five ends, depending on the size candle.
Yeah, I just pass it off as them being young and because that's what I did.
Red Bull, you down the Red Bull, you drink a lot of coffee, you take vitamins, you try to work out, go to the gym. Well, some of these people don't have that regiment, and they will take other supplements to maintain after a week straight of something.
Yeah, well, now I get it. All right, so we're gonna be asking, our coworkers, people working with us, we're gonna introduce some training. What else can we continue to do?
You got to have policies. Whether you saw drugs being used on your property, whether you saw a sale, whether you saw an employee, have a policy, proactive policy that says zero tolerance. Maybe even implement a policy that has random drug screening. Maybe have that before they get hired. Maybe have it during the course of their employment. But have a policy about we are a drug-free work environment. If you need help, tell me, and you get out of jail free card if you come tell me. And then point them in the right direction for counseling, for substance abuse counseling or other help. And then have a discipline policy that if you get caught, if you come to work high, you could be terminated. Don't say they will be terminated because sometimes you won't terminate them. So have a policy that says we're zero tolerance. Here's where you get help, and this is what's going to happen when you get caught.
Now you're saying all this on the assumption that you're dealing with an owner or an operator who is on the legal side of things.
Well,
but there's also that other element to where things are there's not that white and black area.
Well, and you can have the operator who knows what's going on and wants to bury their head in the sand, but we're hoping that when you listen to this, you realize that, maybe I was like Manny when I first started. Now, if there are drugs going on and I don't recognize the signs and symptoms, let me be proactive and implement some training, policies, and procedures, and see if maybe it'll never come up. But if it does, at least I'm prepared for that worst case scenario.
And so we're coming from an angle, like pretty much everything ties in from what we teach, what we talk about is coming from a liability side of things.
And it's tremendous liability, man.
So let's talk a little bit about that.
I mean, just imagine the press in the city of Fayetteville when you read this article of a bar where bartenders, managers, servers, bouncers were arrested, walked out in zip tie handcuffs, and And I guarantee you, I didn't see it, but I guarantee there was some television media there. They had the newspaper media because they got pictures of employees being walked out. That's great press. And even if you do open up, what is the perception forever now of that bar of Mickey's? It's a drug haven. That's what the press will be, and that's what it'll say for days after. So that's a bad part of the liability. But number one that you should think of is the criminal liability. It's illegal. All of these drugs are illegal to possess, sell, and have on the premise. Number two, it's tremendous civil liability should something happen and people are under the influence of drugs.
So you're saying on the criminal side, that's obvious.
People are going to get arrested.
On the civil side of things, if activity is happening within your four walls as a venue and something happens, and it can be determined that whatever incident happens is related to drugs illegal activity, you're, as an owner and operator, leaving yourself open to...
That liability window is even open wider when they start looking at intentional acts and whether you're under the influence of a controlled substance or not.
So part of it would be whether or not you or your staff or people that work for you were under the influence. The second part would be, did I know of this activity? And if I knew of this activity and I did nothing about it.
Yeah. Every ABC official across the country understands that random acts will happen. But if you have a reasonable person and you have several things happen at your venue and you took no steps to stop that type of activity, it's pretty obvious you condoned it. And you may have not condoned it outwardly, but by allowing it to continue, that's condoning it.
So by not doing anything is actually, in a sense, putting your stamp of approval on it or allowing it to happen.
Correct.
What else in those regards?
Well, on the criminal side and the civil side of the liability, let me lay this out to you, and this is a very standard progression. From a cop standpoint, they see this all the time regarding drugs. Let's look at your bar. If you just admit you have some drug use, follow me on this little chain here, this little trail. You got drug use. The drug users go there and they know they can use drugs there. Now, I don't mean you're allowing it to go on, but if it's even hidden and they do it once or twice, or they do it in the bathroom and there's no bathroom attendant, they do it in the parking lot and no one goes out to question them in the car, they do it in the parking lot and they're going in and out of your bar and no one questions them, they learn that there's some tolerance and acceptance. So you have use, then you have more drug use, then you have drug dealers. And if you have people dealing drugs, those drug dealers have money. And if they have drugs and they have money, then they're going to have guns. They may not have the gun themselves, but they'll have some sort of protection. And if you have drugs, sales, drug dealers, money, guns, you're going to have shootings, other police problems, other issues there because of that. And I've seen it in countless times where it starts with one simple arrest by the police. And all of a sudden the floodgates open where they realize, holy cow, they just came onto a hornet's nest here, that this owner is home sleeping. And employees are using, they're selling, they're allowing these things to go on. It's being done in the parking lot, right under the nose of a reasonable owner or manager, and they're looking the other way.
And I like your analogy of a hornet's nest because it's, you might see one hornet outside the hive, but if you hit that hive, and you
there they come.
Yeah, so it basically, from your experience, what you're saying is that generally all it takes is one arrest.
Yeah,
and it could open up a whole or expose a whole network of
here's a server.
Okay.
She's on her way home. She's got a dime bag of Coke in her pocket. She's got 10 tabs of ecstasy. She's given one to her girlfriend. She's using Coke to maintain her own habit and her hours. And she gets caught. The police pull her over for attempted or DUI, running a stop sign. They smell alcohol on her at 3:30 in the morning because somebody spilled a drink on her. She says, yeah, I'm coming from the bar. They get into her purse somehow and they find her Coke. Now it's a felony arrest. If she's got any skeletons that she's keeping, she's gonna bear them right there. So if the manager's involved, if the manager knows, if she knows where she bought it, if it's a customer that comes to your bar regularly and he sold it to her, she's going to tell them everything in hopes of them dismissing that felony, letting her plead to a misdemeanor, and all of a sudden the hornet's nest has been ruptured. She was the one little hornet, and now the cops know that there's all these other things going on. They're going to start an undercover investigation, just like this year-long investigation in Fayetteville. And so it goes back to your point. If you suspect something, make an attempt to do something about it. Don't let it just continue to grow and think it was one thing.
The possible ramifications could be is that this could quickly escalate. A problem like this could get out of hand quickly.
And you may never see it. It's not like a bar fight where an argument, might lead to a fight that leads to 3 people fighting, 5 people fighting, 10 people hurt, and then a gun comes out. That's a natural progression we have seen. In this type of case, although I've seen it, many bar owners have not seen this type of progression, and it will absolutely happen.
All right, so then what's our next talking point here?
Well, once you understand the progression and where it can go to, know what to do and have that policy set. What do I do when I find dope at the door? I mean, the typical scenario I use when I'm training is very basic, where a guy goes to pull out his ID and a dime bag of cocaine falls out and hits the ground. Oh, he's got that oh shit face. Oh, man. And he kind of looks at you, and don't overthink it. I mean, for the guards to understand what they got, it goes to one of my training points. Know what you know. Okay, I know that's illegal. I know we don't allow it in our bar, and I know I'm not going to let them in. Know what you know. That's it. And managers and owners should back that play. You don't have to recover that coke. I mean, when you were an operator, what did you tell your guys at all? If you told them anything, if they found dope in the bar or at the door?
I asked that they notify management immediately.
Okay. Did you let the guy in?
No. I wouldn't. Yeah,
simple.
I'd send them away.
Notify managers, send them away. And that's all you really need to think about. You didn't want your guys making arrests, although they could. That's a felony committed in their presence, and we haven't really got into that in this topic, but that is a felony committed in that guard's presence. They can make a citizen's arrest right there at the door. I know, don't send me any bad comments on the podcast stuff, but that is a felony committed in their presence. You don't want your guy doing that. Number one, they're not the police. Number two, you don't want them to be doing that. So let him pick it up and say, go home for the night. I can't let you in.
Yeah, the basic response would be, we don't allow that here.
Sorry.
You got to go.
And remember, he's going to come back. He's going to go around the corner and snort it. He's going to go leave it in his car. He's going to put it in his shoe or his crotch and try to come back in the door again. Sorry, not tonight, partner. I'm going to have to turn you away. So it's that simple. If narcotics are covered at your door, notify managers, deny entry. Period. What about inside? Okay, we dealt with the door. What about inside? Don't overthink it. The same thing. You know what you know. If you see what you think is a hand-to-hand transaction, something goes into your hand, something comes from your hand to my hand. I know what I saw. I didn't see you pass in a cigarette. I'd see the cigarette. I saw something that you were hiding. I gave you something I was hiding. You gave me dope. I gave you money. Notify your manager. Manager's response should be, let's get our other guard. Let's ask them to step outside, and let's not let them in. Yeah, but they could accuse us of profiling them. So what? You can refuse service for whatever you want, providing it's not one of the protected class issues, and possession or sales of drugs is not. Don't let them in. Let them make a complaint. If managers decide, well, I didn't see enough, and let them, okay, at least you have a policy. Another area of use is perhaps in the bathroom. I mean, know what you know, Manny. What could it be? And
I was great at catching that.
You walk into that bathroom, and you see 2 sets of legs in the stall.
Yeah, you could. A lot of times you could see it happening before it. I mean, one would be the behavior outside.
You can see the body language.
You would keep an eye on that, and then you see 2 males, 2 females going into the bathroom at the same time.
And isn't the body language simple? They look at each other. The one who's doing the selling will look around. Will look back.
Well, part of it was the selling, and then part of it was just going into the bathroom stalls to use.
And then they go into bathroom stall. Like, I've got some I can give you, but the outside body language is the same. And it's the same for a cop on the street watching a couple guys in a mall or watching a couple guys undercover on the street. The seller typically always looks around. Then he'll take the lead and walk off to the bathroom. The secondary person buying or using with him will walk with him, and then they go in the stall. Well, tell me, what else could be going on in the stall, Manny? 2 guys in the stall.
Well, if there's 2 people in one stall, there's 1 or 2 things happening.
Yep.
Sex or drugs.
Or drugs. Now, women, throw in the third thing with women. Women could just be in the same stall together. Well, giggling, laughing, going to the bathroom. That's it. But normal sex or drugs. Know what you know. That's all it is. They're not in there having a meeting of, the Moose Lodge.
Yeah, that's obvious. When one of my typical things would be is when I'm doing a bathroom inspection is I always put my head down and I'd look underneath the stalls to make sure that things were good.
Legs are legs, and you know which way they go.
Yeah.
That's it. And that's how simple it is. Now, do we need to rush in? Do we need to kick the door down and drag people out? I think there's a video.
I actually have I never did it, but what I've always wanted to do is my protocol would be is if I saw two guys in a stall, would be hit the lights. You throw a bowl of flour over the top.
Oh my God.
Then you take one of those soccer horns and you just blare that, and then you turn it on, and then they have to leave in shame, covered in white flour.
Yeah.
Everybody knows they're drug users.
That's good. Yeah. I would say use gasoline and a lighter.
That's what I would play out in my head.
Yeah.
But my normal response would be to hit the door and say, hey guys, we got to leave.
And hopefully it's not the blind guy being walked out with his handler, walking him out and helping him.
Yeah.
Way to go, Manny.
No,
now you just embarrassed the blind guy.
I think I would have saw the cane.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why he had a second guy. But, okay, so we digress a little bit. However, we don't need to rush in. 2 guys in a stall, 3 guys in a stall. You tell your other guard. What the end result is what? And I love role-playing this when I'm training. And I know the people in Miami. I know the people in D.C. are thinking of this if they're listening to this podcast because we just trained on it. When there's no reason to hurry, don't hurry. So you got guys in the stall. They're either having sex, which is not allowed per policy, or they're doing drugs, which is not allowed per policy. And the end result is they've got to go. So why kick the door down? I think we talked about it on one of our earlier podcasts where a bouncer in Europe or something beat the crap out of a kid. Pittsburgh or South Africa?
South Africa.
Beat the crap out of a kid.
South Africa. They're not even close.
I don't know. Wherever.
Yeah, that was a South African where the guy just knocked out the kid for smoking marijuana.
Yeah, for smoking dope in the bathroom. What the hell's that? And with this, 2 guys in the stall. What's our hurry?
I think this is something that comes with maturity because as a young manager, it would be
hey, get out of there.
You'd want to get them out of there. But as you mature and you think about the process, the end result's going to be the same. These guys are leaving.
That's right.
Whether or not they put it up their nose or shove it down their pants or put it in the toilet.
You've limited that liability, partner.
So, yeah, there's really no reason to rush. I would usually, my standard protocol would be is call some backup.
Yep.
Knock on the door. Guys, I know what's going on in there. We're going to have to take it outside, and I'm going to have to ask you guys to leave.
And that's certainly one simple way to do it. I would only add in, you can wait for your backup, knock on that door. Gentlemen, let's talk outside. They're going to deny it. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. But you're still not letting them in. And even if you don't have backup quick enough, or you only are a manager and you have no guards, let them finish. They walk out. They one at the bar, one sits at the table. Tell your bartender to cut him off. Ask him to step outside. Make him leave. Don't let him back in. Let him know why. He can deny it. Then go to the other guy and do the same thing. If they want to push it, let them push it, and you call 911. I know you don't want to. I'm using this as an example. You've got no guards. They know they're doing dope. He's got it in his system. He's got it in his pocket. Let him pitch a fit about it. Your end result is the end result. They're gone.
So that's one. That's some tips to handle it while it's going on in your bar. What are some other things to look for?
Well, and don't overthink this. If you don't have a drug policy, get one. Have a zero tolerance policy with employees. Have a zero tolerance policy within your bar. And when you see it, try to make a normal, prudent reaction to it. Don't go overboard like we just discussed with the bathroom stall. This could be on a VIP table. It could be on the dance floor. It could be in the corner of the area of the hallway near the bathroom where you see a hand-to-hand transaction. Relax. Know what you saw. You're going to ask them to leave, and don't overdo it. The last thing I would suggest to you is regarding found narcotics. Whether it's at the end of the night, you see a little baggie on the floor, they're under the table, outside where your line is in your parking lot, have a protocol and a policy for that too. And we offer typically 3 normal, simple responses. One is probably the industry standard, which is, I don't know, let me ask you, what would you do at the end of the night? Sometime during the evening, you see a baggie of white powder on the floor as you're walking through your venue. What would you do typically?
Typically destroy it.
You just pick it up and walk to the bathroom in a minute or two and flush it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the normal response I hear around the country. What I want to offer you is take one extra step, because I want to show the easy stuff, the simple stuff is done to that jury. So when you find it, notify another employee, even if you are the manager. Notify another employee to be with you when you go in that bathroom. Flush that, then make a small entry in your logbook. Found narcotics in front of table 3. Notified Jimmy. We flushed it, and I made my note. And the third response is from other just picking up and flushing it. Second response is notifying another employee, picking it up and flushing it, making an entry. And the third response is do what the police call a found narcotics call. And I know you're not going to want to do this because you don't want to call the cops for silly stuff. But it's another pattern establishment that you're doing by notifying them of found narcotics. It won't count against you. It won't count as a call for service against you. You're just notifying that you found it. What do? They show up, they put it in their pocket, they impound it later when they get back to their station. You make an entry of who picked it up and what time they did, and that's that. If they don't show up before closing, you go back to number 2.
So the important thing with the logging aspect is that in logging it, you create a record of how you handle things. And if you don't have that logged and something happens and you have to appear in front of a court or, plead your case, you're establishing a pattern of the way you do things.
By logging it, you have that pattern of the way you do things. Yeah, correct.
And plus the policy of I have somebody to witness it, which could potentially save you from larger liability.
I only know one case where this happened, and I use this as a story when I train, but I only know of one case where it ever happened, where I'm sure it's happened before or with other people, but here's a bartender who's working the club. He's got a written policy on what to do. He picks up the dope when he finds it, and he's busy, and he just puts it in his pocket, and he's thinking to himself, I'm going to flush this. He's driving home. He gets pulled over, typical 3:30 in the morning. Where are you coming from? The bar. I step out of the car. Do you got any dope on you? Oh, you know what? I do, but it's not mine. Well, he ended up spending the night in jail. They ended up believing his story, not filing charges, but he got to spend a day and a half in jail.
Unfortunate.
Unfortunate. Take that moment right then. Either, number 1, just go straight and flush it. Number 2, notify another employee, flush it and document it. Number 3, put it in the safe, call police for a found narcotics call, and then if they don't show up, then flush it. Establish that pattern.
I would also say that even though there's reluctance not to want to call your police department on a found narcotics call, I think it's actually a good thing, because in the eyes of the law enforcement, and you're an owner or an operator or a bouncer, an employee who has made that step, it's showing to them that or demonstrating to them that you're doing the right things.
And remember
that this is not something you're just ignoring.
Right.
Or you have some sort of mentality and reputation with them that you don't allow this to happen.
And even if they don't show up, Manny, what do? You fall back on step number 2. You flush it anyway and make one small documentation note.
So that documentation note would say, called the police for a found narcotics call, waited 48 hours, no one showed. My next choice was, as I destroyed it, my server, Jimmy, witnessed me flushing it down the toilet.
Correct.
That's it.
And you don't even have to wait 48 hours. What I tell people, once the bar closes, so if you found it at midnight, bar closes at 3 a.m., at 3:10, part of your closing responsibilities is to flush the dope, but make that entry. And I know a lot of you are thinking, well, what if? Yeah, what if? Well, you deal with what if when what if comes. But if you have a policy written, you have a policy, a trained, and you have a policy that you do, that's what you're going to do. And it won't get lost in the minutia of the daily operation. It's part of policy.
All right, Robert, can I ask you this? As far as trends right now, because both you and I, we've been around long enough to where drugs come in and out, popularity rises and declines. What seems to be the popular drug of choice that is relevant?
Hybrid of ecstasy. And people are calling it Molly, which is not whatsoever. Molly, and there's varying degrees out there, certainly prescription drugs, OxyContin and Soma and Ritalin and Ativan, and all those are prescription drugs that young people are taking. But one of the more common ones is Molly. I know in Miami it's used. I heard from different guards that they see people on Molly all the time. And when I got down to the bottom line with them, they were considering Molly as ecstasy. And frankly, ecstasy is pure and simple MDMA, methyl-and-dioxymethamphetamine. It's a clean drug. It's a love drug. There are typically no bad side effects for 1 or 2 time use. I'm not saying it's a good drug, because it does do things to the mind that it chips away at your brain. But Molly is a more dangerous drug, true Molly. It's methamphetamine that's cut with other harmful drugs. Molly cut with more methamphetamine. Ecstasy cut with more methamphetamine. Ecstasy cut with bath salts. Ecstasy cut with some other hardcore substance. And they think they're getting ecstasy. They don't get the proper return on their investment, and they take 2 of them or 3. And then the other harder drug kicks in. and gets to the overdose stage. Boston, DC, New York, I know of several documented cases where they finally did the blood work on these people. Before they died, they said they took 3 hits of Molly or 3 hits of what they thought was ecstasy. And when they do the autopsy, they find these other harder substances in their body. That's, from what I see, the prescription drug trend, where young people are taking prescription drugs, or Molly, which is a mix of ecstasy and some other harder substance.
So let's just say that I'm ignorant owner and I really don't have much experience in this. What would be the signs of people using Molly?
No alcohol consumption, blown eye pupils. The pupils of the eyes are blown, big as cats. Big, and, I'll be on it, shameful plug. Take our online narcotics training course. We've got some great pictures and great video of blown pupils there that you can really see. Or go work the door for a little bit and watch your people coming in at night. Understanding, though, alcohol will blow the pupils, marijuana will blow the pupils, but so will cocaine, meth, ecstasy, or Molly. Blow mean make the pupils big, a big black circle like a cat.
Okay.
But the second thing about the blown pupils, everything but light will make those pupils go small. When you're alcohol ingested, marijuana ingested, or some other normal thing, light will make those pupils go small. When they're blown because of ecstasy or Molly or some other opiate, they stay big.
So those are some of the physical signs. What are some of the physical signs? What are some of the behavioral signs?
Tons of energy, lots of water drinking, high temperatures. Some of the venues, and it's kind of a throwback, and I kind of wondered about it when I was in Miami, and one of the venues had a cool down area with a fan blowing in just one area of the club with a little bit of water misting. Granted, it does get hot there, but this is a classic sign of, we know we have an issue. We know we have young people or guests overdosing or their body temperature getting higher, so we're going to get an area that is more of a cool down area where they can go and just cool their body down. A sheer sign. I mean, you got to know what you have. So increased water intake, high levels of energy, no alcohol consumption. Oftentimes it'll be mixed in with a lot of touching, shoulder touching, neck rubbing. Increased body temperatures mean they want to take their shirts off, or they will wear very little clothing to keep that body temperature down.
All right. Let me ask you this one last question, because we're going long here. But let's say that I'm an owner, operator, and I know I have a big problem.
It's a hard step. I know.
So, this is almost like asking the drug addict, right? I have a problem. What about reaching out to your law enforcement?
Absolutely. If you don't think this works, I can tell you a number of clubs. If you want to send an email and ask me, I'll point you in the direction of these club owners, and they'll tell you. They made the reach out. They put their hand out to law enforcement and said, look, I think I've got a problem. Can you come in? I give you permission. Come in one Saturday night. Yes, I know you're going to make some arrests. I realize that you may arrest one of my employees. I want to clean this up. I can't have this. I realize I've got a problem. Sure enough, the cops in one city, they came in with, they came in with 5 cars, about 7 officers, a canine unit, a couple of narcotics guys. And sure enough, 2 of the employees got arrested. About 5 customers got arrested. But within the next 3 months, he had no feeling of drug use in his place. And he opened the door to let the cops know, I don't want this. I need to clean this up. What do I do? Help me. And they saw him as an ally instead of someone trying to bury their head in the sand like the guy we talked about in the very beginning of the podcast.
Because I could see this to where maybe you're an absentee owner. Maybe you don't even live in the same town, and you come in and you realize, wow, something's going on here. And maybe I don't have the cooperation of my management. Maybe I'm suspicious of my management.
There's a club going to open up probably within the next month and a half in D.C. It's called Empire, the Empire Club. He's already researching civilian drug sniffing dogs that he can do at a random time to go through his club to check the different floors, check the DJ area, check the bar area, check the entertainment area, because he wants to be proactive right off the get-go.
That's actually a really good idea.
Yeah. And remember, with a private drug sniffing dog, there's no police. So if you find dope in somebody's bag, you can fire them. You don't need to call the police. So, if you want to go out and find your own drug sniffing dog like they use in some schools, in some housing authority areas, go get one.
All right. So let's just recap this. Basically, we're in agreement that drugs exist. It's whether or not recognizing that there's an issue or a problem that you need to address.
Yes.
Steps to take are training of your employees, policies and procedures, maybe a little bit of investigating of what the extent of it is.
And following your training and following your policies.
Then don't underestimate it. Even if you think it's small, it might be larger than you think.
It's just Susie. No, look into it. It may be bigger.
Because, like we said, this goes back to the hornet's nest analogy. And then we talked a little bit about if you do find it happening within your venue at a certain point in time, how to address that. Basically, that's hypervigilance, understanding body language, being proactive. Don't overthink it.
Know what you know. You saw
know.
what you saw, and you know what you saw. Don't be afraid to admit it, and just deal with it.
Well, then to recap, if we find drugs, document it. Have somebody witness you destroy it. Don't be afraid to call the police.
Correct.
Establish that record.
And you're going to be afraid to call them. That's normal. I got that. Once you do it the first time and they tell you you're okay, you'll be surprised how simple it is.
And then finally, understanding what trends are happening. This is something that will continue to change, and it's something that you kind of have to keep your ear to the news stories, what drugs are out there, what's popular, understanding the effects, and how to find them. And the last part is if it's so big of a problem, don't be afraid to reach out.
Correct. Right? Correct. We've got a lot of resources. We can point you in the direction, or we can certainly, I remember and I'll leave you with this. I was at the nightclub and bar show 8 years ago, and we're talking about recognizing club drugs, which was defined at the time ecstasy, GHB, ketamine, rohypnol. And somebody asked, they said, how do people, I heard they smoke meth. And although not a club drug, it's still used a lot. And I showed them a picture of what a pipe looks like, and I showed them what the crunched glass looks like when they step on it to get rid of the evidence. A week later, I got a call from this bar owner, said, "Oh my God, I found all kinds of this stuff in the bathroom stall, on the floor, underneath certain tables, outside in the parking lot, in between cars." But it was nice that he was unaware, he got educated, he got training, and he followed up on it. And he made that effort to not bury his head in the sand to clean up his space. He put up signs. He got his employees up to speed. He got rid of a couple of them. He asked the police for training. They give training for free. And he moved on. But at least he made an effort instead of letting it grow to turn into that hornet's nest.
Yeah, so again, there's a lot of information that we discussed today, and there's probably a lot more that you could research or get into. I'd like to invite everybody to check out our Club Drugs and Narcotics course online. A lot of great information, additional information that you can use to help better your business. Robert, when we start these topics, we always try to set ourselves on a time limit, but there's just a lot of information, and one, because we want to get that information out there. So if we went a little long, we apologize, but let's wrap it up. Again, we're going to take a short break. When we come right back, we'll just close out with some announcements. Stick with us. We'll be right back. If you like our show, visit nightclubsecurity.com for more information and access to free resources. Remember, that's www.nightclubsecurity.com. All right, everybody, welcome back. Robert, we're going to have to make a quick close out here, but just a couple announcements. Actually, we just have one announcement. You're making your trip out to Edmonton tomorrow.
Yep, be there for 3 days.
And that's going to be the
Responsible Hospitality Edmonton Group. If you happen to be listening in Canada, you want to go, they're still selling tickets to this conference.
And so you're going to be there. You're going to be sitting on the board, or actually one of the panels.
Panel discussion.
So you'll be there for a couple days. We don't have any announcements for any hard dates yet. I know we're trying
late June. Late June, we'll be in San Diego giving a PSO, California licensing course.
Yeah,
in late
so
June.
We're planning on a San Diego PSO. We're also planning on a LA PSO course. When we get those dates, we'll post them on our website. And then we'll obviously...
And another Miami date coming up in July also.
But that's a private one. So
correct.
That's that. Robert, if they want to find us on Facebook...
Nightclub Security.
Search Nightclub Security.
Yep.
Twitter.
At Bouncer Coach.
At Bouncer Coach. And then also I'd like everybody to check out our YouTube page. You can search Bouncer Trainer or Robert C. Smith on YouTube, and you can find our videos there. I think that's about it. Download us. You can subscribe to us on iTunes. So you can search for Nightclub Security. It will come
We
right
love
up.
getting your feedback. Please send us comments too.
Yeah, and that's at questions@nightclubsecurity.com for questions. Any question you have, or any comment that you have.
Yeah, absolutely.
One last thing, we'd like to really promote, grow this community. You guys are doing a good job. The downloads and the feedback and response we're getting on this podcast is fantastic. So continue to pass this along to your manager, to a coworker, a fellow bouncer or guard that you know, and we do appreciate that. So,
yeah, Jeffrey, thanks for the in person-to-person comments you made a week ago, but come on, give us some love online.
All right, and whoever's out there in Texas that is downloading the heck of our podcast, thank you. We appreciate it. Let us know who you are. We'd be interested and would like to make contact with you. That's it for today's show. My name is Manny Marquez.
I'm Robert Smith.
And be nice.